Friends, before I begin the story, I want to ask you something. Have you ever seen someone whose life looked like it was over, someone who was crushed, silenced, and forgotten, yet somehow a spark appeared in the darkest hour? If you stay with me until the end, you'll understand why this isn't just another sad tale, but a journey of resilience, love, and hope that I promise will stay with you long after. And if stories like this touch your heart, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel, because together we can keep sharing stories that remind us of the power of the human spirit. Her name was Anna, a woman who once laughed so easily that people said her smile could light up the room. But life has a cruel way of testing the brightest souls. She grew up in a small town where the streets were quiet, the neighbors knew your name, and the only dream most people carried was to survive, not to soar. And wanted more. She wanted to write, to sing, to build a life full of stories and meaning. But at 17, her path was stolen. Those who should have protected her turned against her. Words meant to comfort cut her deeper than knives, and by 19, she found herself carrying not only her own broken dreams but also a child growing inside her womb. She was too young, too fragile, and too unsupported. The world whispered, her story is over. And for a time, she believed them. But here is where fate does something unexpected. It introduces another soul into the narrative, someone who refuses to let tragedy have the final word. His name was Daniel, a single father barely scraping by, a man with hands calloused from working double shifts at the factory and eyes that had seen too much pain for his 30 years. He lost his wife to illness when their daughter Lily was just 3, and since then he had carried both the burden and the blessing of being father and mother at once. Every night, after tucking Lily into bed, he sat by the window with her little shoes on the floor and whispered apologies to the wife he could no longer touch. He promised he would give Lily a better life, though some nights he wasn't sure how. One rainy evening, paths crossed. Danielle saw Anna sitting outside the grocery store, her thin jacket soaked through, her hands trembling as she held her swollen belly. People walked past her, some with pity, others with disdain, but none stopped. Something in Daniel couldn't walk away. He crouched down, offered her his umbrella, and asked her the simplest question that can sometimes save a life. Do you need help? That moment became the crack in the darkness through which light began to seep. Anna hesitated, ashamed of her circumstances, but Daniel didn't judge. He offered her a ride home, though she confessed she had nowhere to go. His chest tightened at her words, because he recognized that kind of loneliness is the kind that eats you alive at night when there's no one to call, no place to belong. Against all logic, he told her she could come to his place just for the night, just one night. But life has a way of turning temporary shelters into turning points. That first evening, Lily, his daughter, peeked out from behind her father's leg, curious about the stranger and their living room. Anna smiled weakly, her face paled, and Lilia, innocent and pure, walked up to her with a blanket from the couch and said, "You look cold, you can use this." Anna cried, not from the chill but from the simple kindness she hadn't felt in so long. Something in Daniel's heart softened as he watched that exchange, and though he didn't know it yet, this was the beginning of a story that none of them expected. Days passed, then weeks. Daniel helped Anna find small jobs she could do while pregnant, jobs that didn't strain her body. She insisted on helping around the house, cooking meals and folding laundry, grateful for the roof over her head. Slowly, she began to laugh again, a soft, cautious laughter that Daniel noticed every time. He didn't say much, but in his silence, he offered her the safety to breathe. And Anna, for the first time in years, began to believe maybe her story wasn't over after all. But the world doesn't forgive easily. Rumors began to swirl in town. People whispered about the young pregnant woman living under a widowed man's roof. They said she was a burden, a mistake, a reminder of choices gone wrong. Anna heard them, and though their words pierced her, Danielle stood firm. He told her, "Let them talk. They don't know you. They don't know us. What matters is what we build here, not what they say out there." His voice carried the weight of a man who had battled storms before, and Anna clung to that strength. When the day finally came, Anna went into labor on a snowy night. Daniel drove her to the hospital, his knuckles white on the steering wheel, praying under his breath. Hours later, after screams, tears, and pain. A baby girl entered the world. Anna named her Grace, because she said Grace was the only thing that had kept her alive. Holding that baby against her chest, Anna wept, and Daniel, though not by blood, felt like he had gained another child that night. Little did Anna know, there were still people who wanted to silence her, to shame her, to remind her that she didn't deserve happiness. But what they didn't count on was Daniel's quiet, unshakable resolve. He had lost once, but he wasn't about to lose again. And with Lily by his side and Grace now in Anna's arms, he decided something in his heart that would change everything. If they tried to end Anna's story, he would help her write a new one. And friends, that's where we leave chapter 1A, not as an ending, but as the fragile beginning of something beautiful. If you want to see how this story unfolds, stay tuned for chapter 2. Because the battles they face next will test everything they've built together. And before you go, if this story touched even a corner of your heart, please make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us keep telling stories like this, stories of pain, hope, and second chances. Friends, when we left off, Anna had just brought Grace into the world, and though the night was cold and the snow fell heavy, the warmth of that tiny heartbeat promised a new beginning. But beginnings, as beautiful as they are, come with battles. And this is where the story deepens, where choices must be made, where wounds of the past threaten to rise, and where love is not the kind wrapped in romance, but the fierce, sacrificial kind that stands through storms. It becomes the thread holding everything together. If you're still here with me, I ask you to listen closely. Because what you're about to hear isn't just a story, it's a reflection of how even the broken can rise again. And if these stories matter to you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe so we can keep sharing them together. Life after Grace's birth was a mixture of exhaustion and wonder. Anna's nights were endless, her body aching as she rocked her newborn back and forth, whispering lullabies through tears she couldn't always explain. Sometimes they were tears of joy, sometimes of fear, but mostly they were tears of gratitude. She looked at Grace's tiny fingers curled around her own and thought, they tried to end me, but here she is, a proof that I am still here. Daniel helped where he could, even though he still worked long hours to provide for Lily. Some nights he came home bone-tired, shoulders heavy, but still he took Grace in his arms so Anna could rest, pacing the living room with the baby pressed against his chest. Lily, too, had stepped into her role as the older sister. Though she was only 7, she would sit by Anna, humming songs she made up, and Anna marveled at how natural the child's kindness was. For the first time in a long time, Anna felt like she belonged, not as a guest, not as a mistake, but as part of something real. But happiness attracts whispers. In town, rumors spread faster than wildfire. She's living off him. Some said, that child will only drag him down. Others murmured. Anna heard it every time she stepped out for groceries or walked Grace down the street. Their eyes judged, their lips sneered, and though she tried to hold her head high, inside she felt the same crushing shame she thought she had left behind. One afternoon, when she returned from the market, Daniel found her on the porch, sitting with her face buried in her hands. Anna, he said softly, crouching in front of her. What happened? She shook her head, unable to meet his eyes, but finally whispered, maybe they're right. Maybe I'm just a burden you don't need. Daniel's jaw tightened, and for a moment, he didn't speak. Then, with the firmness that came from a place deep in his chest, he said, don't you ever say that again. You and Grace are not a burden. You're family now, and I don't care what they say out there. What matters is what we choose to be in here. His hand tapped his chest over his heart. And in here, you belong. Tears filled Anna's eyes, because no one had ever claimed her like that before. Not with words, not with truth, not with love that expected nothing in return. But battles weren't only fought with gossip, they came in more brutal forms. Grace's biological father, a man who had once charmed Anna but later abandoned her when she needed him most, reappeared. He had heard she was living with Daniel, that she had given birth, and suddenly, he wanted rights. Not because he cared, but because his pride had been wounded by the whispers around town. He showed up one evening, banging on Daniel's door, demanding to see his daughter. Anna froze when she saw him. The memories rushed back like a wave crashing over her. the manipulation, the betrayal, the nights of loneliness. She held Grace tighter, her body trembling. Daniel stepped between them, his broad frame blocking the doorway. "You need to leave," Daniel said calmly but firmly. The man sneered. "She's my kid. You think you can just play hero and take what's mine?" Daniel's fists clenched, but his voice remained steady. "You had your chance. You walked away. This child doesn't need a man who abandons her. She needs people who will stay." The tension in the air was thick, and for a moment, Anna feared violence, but the man eventually spat at the ground and stormed off, promising it wasn't over. That night, Anna cried into Daniel's shoulder, terrified of what might come. But Daniel whispered, "He won't win. Not while I'm here." Weeks turned into months, and despite the challenges, life inside their little home grew richer. There were simple joys of family dinners where Lily insisted on saying grace, laughter that echoed in the kitchen when Grace giggled for the first time, and quiet moments when Anna read bedtime stories with Lily curled at her side. Slowly, Anna began to write again. She filled notebooks with words she thought she had lost, words about pain and healing, words about darkness and light. Daniel noticed her late at night, sitting at the table with her pen moving furiously, tears streaking her cheeks, and though he didn't read them, he knew she was reclaiming the voice that had once been stolen from her. One day, he told her, "The world will hear your story." She shook her head, doubting herself, but his faith in her planted a seed. But storms weren't done testing them. One night, as the wind howled outside, Daniel received the letter Grace's biological father had filed for custody. Anna felt the world collapse under her feet. How could she fight him? She had no money, no standing, nothing but the love she held for her daughter. Panic set in, and she told Daniel she should leave, that she didn't want to ruin his life with court battles and rumors. But Daniel stopped her, his voice breaking as he said, "Anna, don't you understand? You're not alone anymore. We'll fight this together. You, me, Lilia, we're a family. Families don't run, families stand." The weeks that followed were filled with courtrooms and cold stares. Anna trembled as lawyers questioned her past, painting her as reckless, unfit, a mistake. But every time she faltered, she saw Daniel in the front row, his eyes steady, reminding her she was stronger than she believed. Lily would draw pictures of their familiar four figures holding hands and leave them in Anna's lap with the words, "We love you." Those simple drawings gave her the courage to keep standing. In the end, the judge ruled in Anna's favor. Grace would stay with her, safe and loved. The man who had tried to take her walked out of the courtroom defeated, his pride shattered. Anna collapsed into Daniel's arms, sobbing with relief, and for the first time, she allowed herself to believe in a future. Not just survival, not just existing, but truly living. From that day forward, everything shifted. Daniel, who had once been only a single dad trying to piece his life together, now found himself part of something bigger, a new chapter, not written in isolation, but shared with Anna and Grace. Anna, who once believed her story had ended before it began, discovered that endings can be rewritten. Together, with Lily's laughter filling the house and Grace's cries turning into coos, they built a life not defined by the past but by the love they chose daily. And friends, that is where Chapter 2 closes, not with a fairy tale ending, but with the truth that sometimes the most broken stories can become the most beautiful when someone refuses to give up. If this journey touched you, if Anna's courage and Daniel's strength reminded you of the power of second chances, please like this video and subscribe to the channel, because every time you do, you help us share more stories like these, stories that matter, stories that heal, stories that remind us that even when they try to end her story, a new chapter can always begin.